430,000 years ago, someone was murdered. Not accidentally, not by an animal, not by a fall. Someone stood face to face with another human being, raised a weapon, and struck them in the head. Twice. And then they threw the body down a 43-foot shaft into the darkness of a cave, where it would lie undiscovered for almost 500,000 years. That's not speculation. That's a conclusion reached using CT scans, 3D modeling, and the same impact trajectory analysis modern forensic investigators use to solve homicides today. This is the oldest murder case ever solved, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how scientists cracked it, along with 2 other cases that will completely change the way you think about violence in our deep past. One involves a famous victim who turns out to have been a killer himself. The other is a crime scene so undisturbed, so untouched for 10,000 years, that the absence of evidence has become the evidence. So let's start with the body at the bottom of the shaft. The site is called Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, in northern Spain. It's a cave system so deep and so difficult to access that researchers have spent decades hauling out the fragmented remains of at least 28 individuals, ancient hominins who lived roughly 430,000 years ago, long before modern humans existed. Among that jumble of bones, one skull stood out. Researchers labeled it Cranium 17. At first glance, Cranium 17 looked like just another fragment in a very old, very confusing collection of bones. But when scientists pieced it back together, they found something that stopped them cold. 2 puncture wounds sitting side by side, directly above the left eyebrow. Here's where it gets interesting. A skull can crack in a lot of ways. It can fracture from a fall. It can shatter from an animal bite. It can splinter under the weight of collapsing rock. Investigators had to rule all of that out, and they did it the same way a modern medical examiner would. They ran the cranium through CT scans. They built 3D models of the wounds. They measured the angle, the depth, and the shape of each puncture, then worked backward to reconstruct the exact trajectory of whatever caused them. What they found was 2 wounds, nearly identical in shape and size, made by the same object, delivered from roughly the same direction, in close succession. That pattern doesn't happen in a fall. It doesn't happen in a scavenging animal attack, where bite marks are irregular and scattered. It happens when someone stands in front of you and hits you, deliberately, more than once, with the same weapon. And then there's the healing question. This is one of the most important tools in the entire field of forensic bone analysis, and it applies just as well to a 430,000-year-old skull as it does to a body found yesterday. When a bone breaks and the person survives, the body immediately begins to repair itself. Blood pools around the fracture. New bone tissue starts to form at the edges. That process leaves a visible signature, even thousands of years later. So when investigators, ancient or modern, look at a fracture, the question is simple. Is there any sign of healing at all? If there is, the injury happened before death, and the person lived with it for some amount of time. If there's absolutely nothing, no healing response whatsoever, that tells you the injury happened right around the time of death, with no time for the body to respond. Cranium 17 showed 0 healing, none, which means whoever this person was, they died immediately or very soon after those 2 blows landed. So, picture the full sequence: a violent, face-to-face confrontation, a weapon striking the same location twice, a death with no time to recover, and then deliberate disposal. The body wasn't left where it fell. It was moved to the mouth of a vertical shaft and dropped 43 feet into the darkness, joining the remains of other individuals who'd ended up in that pit through means we still don't fully understand. That's not just violence. That's concealment. Someone tried to make this problem disappear, and it worked for nearly 500,000 years until modern forensic science pulled it back out of the dark. Now, before you assume our ancestors were constantly killing each other, here's a detail that should stop you in your tracks. Cases like Cranium-17 are rare, genuinely rare. One anthropologist who studied this case pointed out that when you look across the fossil record of ancient hominins, most of the injuries we find come from accidents or predator attacks, not from other people. If lethal violence between early humans had been common, we would expect to see far more of it written into the bones we've recovered. We don't. Which means Cranium-17 isn't proof that our ancestors were savages. It's proof that even hundreds of thousands of years ago, murder was rare enough and significant enough to leave behind a case this clean, this solvable, and this singular. But solving one murder is just the beginning of this story, because the next case flips everything you think you know about being a victim. You've almost certainly heard of Ötzi the Iceman. He's the most famous ancient body ever discovered, a naturally mummified man found frozen in the Alps, over 5,000 years old, killed by an arrow to the back. Most documentaries stop right there. Innocent traveler, ambushed, shot down, tragic, simple, done. Except it isn't simple, not even close. When researchers analyzed DNA recovered from Ötzi's tools, his weapons, and his clothing, they didn't just find his own blood. They found traces from 4 different people. And none of it was his. 4 separate individuals whose blood ended up on the gear this man was carrying when he died. Now sit with that for a second, because it gets more specific and more disturbing. One of those blood traces was on his arrowhead, but not just one person's blood. 2 people's blood layered onto the same arrowhead. Investigators pieced together what that most likely means. Ötzi shot someone with that arrow, retrieved it afterward, which is exactly what you do with a valuable, hard-to-make weapon, and then use that same arrow to kill a second person. Read that again. The most famous murder victim in the ancient world was, in his final days, very likely a killer himself. Not once, possibly twice. This is the part almost no faceless History Channel talks about, because it requires digging into forensic journals instead of repeating the same surface-level Wikipedia summary. The popular version of Ötzi is innocent man, shot in the back, tragic end. The forensic version is a man who was actively engaged in violent conflict in the days leading up to his own death. A combatant, not a bystander. And here's the twist that makes this whole picture even stranger. Ötzi also had defensive wounds from a fight that happened days before he died, the kind of injuries you get from blocking or grappling with an attacker, not from being ambushed. So this wasn't a single isolated event. This was an ongoing, escalating conflict that stretched over multiple days, involving multiple people, multiple violent encounters, and Ötzi was in the middle of it the entire time. So, how does a man who's clearly been fighting for days, who has enemies actively hunting him, end up dead? Here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. In the hours before he died, Ötzi ate a full, substantial meal. Not a hurried bite while running for his life. A real meal. The kind of meal you eat when you feel safe enough to stop moving, sit down, and rest. That single detail changes the entire final chapter of his story. Either his killer was someone he didn't see coming, someone who caught him in a moment where his guard was completely down, or Ötzi believed wrongly that the danger had passed. Because moments after that meal, he was shot from behind and below, an angle that sends the arrow up through the body toward vital organs. That angle isn't random either. It's the exact same kill shot angle prehistoric hunters used on game animals, a shot designed to be efficient, decisive, and final. Whoever killed Ötzi didn't just want him dead. They wanted him dead in one shot, using a method they'd clearly used before, just never on an animal. So Ötzi's death isn't a mystery about a random ambush. It's the final chapter of a multi-day conflict, ended by someone who either caught him completely off guard or who he trusted enough to let his guard down around. And it cost him his life. 2 cases down, 2 individual killings, each one deliberate, each one leaving a physical signature that forensic science could reconstruct thousands of years later. But there's a category of ancient violence that's even more disturbing than a single murder, because it isn't about one person killing another. It's about organized, coordinated killing. And anthropologists actually have a specific term to separate the two. They distinguish between what they call individual acts of aggression, a single killer, a single victim, a personal conflict like the ones we've just covered, and something categorically different, inter-group conflict. That second category involves coordinated weapons, multiple attackers, and multiple victims. It's the anthropological definition of something close to organized warfare. And the way researchers tell the difference isn't guesswork. It comes down to the physical evidence left at a site, the pattern of wounds, and specifically the types of weapons involved. Which brings us to the site that redefines how old war actually is. It's called Nadaruk, and it may be the oldest confirmed massacre site ever discovered. Researchers uncovered the partial remains of 27 individuals, among them at least 8 women and 6 children. Of those 27, 10 skeletons showed unmistakable, undeniable signs of violent death. Let that number settle for a moment, and then consider what the bones actually show. Blunt force trauma to skulls and cheekbones, broken hands, broken knees, broken ribs, arrow wounds to the neck, and in 2 of the men, stone projectile tips still lodged directly in the skull and the chest. Weapons that never got removed because the person died with them still embedded. And then there's the detail that turns this from a tragedy into something closer to a documented atrocity. 4 individuals were found in positions indicating their hands had likely been bound at the time of death. One of them was a woman in the final stages of pregnancy. This wasn't a chaotic brawl that spiraled out of control. This was people being restrained and killed. So, how do researchers know this wasn't just a violent argument that got out of hand, a fight over food or territory that escalated in the heat of the moment? The weapons tell that story. The people responsible for this massacre were carrying gear they wouldn't have used for hunting or fishing. Clubs of multiple sizes, a mix of close combat weapons like knives alongside long-range weapons like arrows, a deliberate combination of tools built for confronting other people, not animals. That specific combination of close and distance weapons is exactly what anthropologists point to as the hallmark of intergroup conflict, not a spontaneous fight. Someone planned this. Someone organized a group, armed them with tools designed for killing people rather than gathering food, and carried out a coordinated attack on a small community of foragers. including binding some of the victims before they died. And then, for 10,000 years, nothing happened to hide it. That's the final piece of this story, and it might be the most chilling one. The victims at Nataruk were never buried, not hidden, not burned, not scattered to conceal what had happened. They were left exactly where they fell, in the open, undisturbed, for 10 millennia, until researchers uncovered them. Compare that to Cranium 17, where a body was deliberately thrown down a 43-foot shaft, an act of concealment, an attempt to make evidence disappear. At Nataruk, there was no concealment at all, and that absence tells its own story. Whoever carried out this massacre didn't feel the need to hide it. There was no fear of consequence, no authority to answer to, nothing resembling justice waiting for them if the bodies were found. They killed and they walked away, and the evidence simply sat there in the open for 10,000 years because no one on earth was ever going to make them pay for it. 3 sites, 3 different windows into how ancient people killed each other, and, just as importantly, how forensic science, built for solving crimes in the present day, has managed to reach back across hundreds of thousands of years and answer questions that once seemed unanswerable. Who did this? How did they do it? Did the victim ever see it coming? And did anyone ever face consequences? At Cima de los Huesos, the answer was a single, deliberate act, followed by an attempt to hide the evidence. At the site where Ötzi died, the answer was far more complicated than victim, a man who had killed before he was killed, caught off guard in a moment of false safety. And at Nataruk, the answer was the most disturbing of all. An organized, weaponized, premeditated attack on families, with a body count and a level of coordination that fits the earliest known definition of something like war. And absolutely no consequences for whoever carried it out. What ties all 3 of these cases together isn't just violence, it's evidence. Every one of these stories exists because bone remembers. A fracture with no healing, a blood trace on a weapon, a cut mark angled in a way that can only come from one direction. Ancient bone can be interrogated with the same rigor as a modern crime scene. And when it is, it stops being a vague, distant abstraction. Cavemen were violent and becomes something far more specific and far more human. A person who ate a meal felt safe and was wrong. A community that was bound and killed and never buried. A body dropped into the dark by someone who thought that would be the end of the story. It wasn't. It just took a few 100,000 years for anyone to notice. So, here's the question I want to leave you with, because I think it matters more than any single detail in this video. Does it change how you see human nature, knowing that even our earliest ancestors were capable of planning, organizing, and carrying out violence this deliberate? Or does the rarity of these cases actually tell a more hopeful story that murder was the exception, not the rule, even in a world with no police, no laws, and no consequences waiting for whoever got away with it? Tell me which one it is for you in the comments. I want to know whether this makes you look at prehistoric people as more brutal than you assumed, or more human than you ever gave them credit for.